Hey everybody, in today's video I'm going to go over a new feature in Google Sheets that I think kind of shows that maybe it's on track to creating something that looks like Power Query except in Google Sheets. With Power Query, in Excel you can pull in data from other websites really easily and do sort of manipulations on that and incorporate that into your spreadsheet. Now in Google Sheets that's not set up yet, but there is an option under the data menu to select data connectors, and there's an option to connect to BigQuery. Now if you don't use BigQuery, that's fine. They have some free data sets that you can connect to, so some public data sets. And so there's a whole lot of stuff in here. So we've got info on baseball, on Bitcoin. We've got air quality. I mean, all sorts of random stuff in here. I don't know that this would be a really comprehensive database that you'd necessarily find what you're looking for. But if you just want to practice and do some of this stuff, test out the new feature, let's say, then this could be something that you find useful. So I'm going to pull in the World Bank data for global population. And there's an option for population by country. Hit connect, and it's going to load this into Google Sheets. And you can see it's a bit of a different layout than your normal Google Sheets sheet. You've got it where you've got these options here for charts, pivot table, function, extract, calculated column, and column stats. So I'm going to quickly go over how these things work. So if I were to select one of these columns, let's say, I can click on column stats. And you can see here, Google Sheets is going to tell me things like the number of rows in there, empty values, unique values, sum, average, medium, max, min. So all sorts of details. This is sort of similar to how you would select the column in Excel and you just have that summary down below. Not terribly useful, but I mean it's there. Add some value. You can also add a calculated column. So here in this data set, I've got values for each of these years up until 2018. So let's say I'm going to create a calculated column that's going to calculate the change from one year to the previous one. So there's a number of functions you can select here, and the one I'm going to use is minus. And so it takes two arguments. So I'm going to just subtract two columns. So I'm just going to take 2018 as one argument, and then 2017 as the previous one. And then change in 2018 is going to be my column name. Add it in there. And now I'm going to have to hit this green apply button. And now it's going to update and do that. So now you can see this, this value here, this change in 2018. So 2018 is blank, but if you look at the change from 2017 to 2018, that difference there, that's 80. Here we had a decline, so that's a negative. So it's calculating correctly. It's doing those minuses. So that's a calculated column. Again, it's something that you can set up on Power Query as well, where you can do all sorts of calculations on that. And there's also a feature to extract some data. So this is basically you're applying a filter. So let's say you don't want to pull in absolutely everything. You just want to create a snapshot of some filters you've applied, as opposed to filtering them in here. So I'm going to hit create to open up a new worksheet. And on here, you'll have the option to, I still have this column stats open, but here I can set up different rules. Like let's say I want to add some filters. So I'm going to look at 2018, and because there's a lot of data in here, I want to filter this to say I want to look at countries or areas where there's more than 100 million people, right? So type in select greater than, and for the value enter 100,000, 10,000, 100,000, million, 10 million, 100 million. So 100 million, and now I might have to do a refresh here as well. Hit apply. And so it's going to load that data. And so this looks to be right. I filtered that data. So I've only got some parts of the world that have really high populations. So it does look like it is doing that calculation correctly. So the extract really is just giving you a snapshot. And here you can specify a row limit that you want as well. So the idea being that you're just looking at a specific extract of your data. You're not looking at the whole thing. So let's go back to that data. And now you can also use a function to apply calculation on one of these columns. So let's just do a simple average here. So again, I'll create a new sheet. And in this case, let's say I want to take the average of 1960, just the first one on there. Really simple. It's going to calculate the average. So, and again, we're going to want to hit that apply button. And so that's going to give me that average. You can see the reference here. So it's referencing that tab, population by country, and then year underscore 1960, which is the name of that field. So nothing really terribly complicated about that, similar to how you do an average function in Excel. And you can also create a pivot table. And again, we'll create a new sheet for that. And a pivot table, I mean, similar as you would set up in Excel as well. So, let's say I want to pull in the values for, again, let's pull in year 1960 under the rows, or under the values, the country under the rows, hit apply. And now, simple pivot table, right? So, I mean, you can do a whole lot of the same sort of stuff that you could do in Excel in terms of setting up your columns or your rows, however you want. And again, you can add those filters again, where you're filtering by, let's say, the largest or smallest countries, whatever you prefer. So that's creating a pivot table. And in the same context, you can create a chart. So again, creating a chart is, we can put this into a new sheet, and I'll do the same thing as I did before. This time, let's say I want to look at 2018 data as my values. So I'm going to put that as my, actually not as my series, actually first I want to select the country as my x-axis. Then for the series, I'm going to select 2018, and then I'm going to create my filter there, just because I don't want everything to show up in here, just because on a chart, obviously you can't have too many countries show up, otherwise it's going to be hard to see anything. So I'm going to add my filter here, and what I'm going to say, it's the value for 2018 is greater than 100 million again. So 100,000, 10,000, 100,000, million, 10 million, 100 million. So greater than 100 million. And so now it's going to load that in there, and I can hit apply. And now this will populate my chart with all those large countries and parts of the world. So this may not be ideal for a chart, but just want to give you an idea that, similar with, Power Query and Excel, we can create a chart off this just like we would a chart from a pivot table. So we've gone over those main functionalities of this. And one cool thing here is, you've got these different refresh options as well. So we've created a lot of different things here, and we can refresh them one by one. So this is where it's starting to look really Power Query like in Excel, because this is a similar sort of setup that you'll notice in Power Query. And what's actually cool here is you can schedule a refresh. That's something you can't do in Power Query in Excel. So you can set that up to repeat every certain number of hours, or you can set a start date, whatever the case may be. So that's a pretty interesting feature that is lacking in Excel, where you have to normally manually refresh, where you'd have to set up a macro. Whereas in Google Sheets, you can schedule that, which is pretty cool. And so that's just a bit of an overview of how this query setup works in Google Sheets right now. So as you can see, there's a lot of things that you can do, similar to Power Query, especially when you're doing the refreshing and you're doing the calculated columns and things like that. We don't quite see those steps where you can add steps and make changes along the way, but Google Sheets is pretty flexible in terms of using Google scripts to manipulate your data and utilize macros. So I wouldn't be surprised if that came along the way in the future. But either way, based on having this option for data connectors on here, if I select connect the BigQuery, there's an option to write a custom query. So there's potential there, I think, to eventually have more flexibility as to what can go in here, because right now that looks pretty limited, just if you have to use BigQuery, whereas there's a lot more data sets that can probably get pulled into here. And I think this is a positive sign that Google Sheets is closing that gap between it and Excel, and that maybe in the near future we might have something that's more comparable to Power Query. So I think this is a really cool one, and I'll say, test it out by going to Data, Connectors, BigQuery, and there's a lot of public databases that you can test around with. So that's an overview of one of Google Sheets' newest features, and hope you found this video useful, and thank you for watching.